6,859 people were killed in this country between October and December last year. That means 562 more people were murdered compared to the same period in 2020. Police Minister Bheki Cele says Inanda in KwaZulu-Natal remains the country's murder capital, with 86 murders recorded in 3 months. The minister has also announced today that Alexandra in Gauteng recorded the highest increase in murders in the months at the end of 2021.
We have recorded significant decrease in most of the crime categories. Crimes such as common robbery, sexual assault, attempted sexual offences and contact sexual offences have recorded 3 to 4 digits decrease, except for murder, which remains worryingly stubborn. In the 3 months of reporting, an 8.9% increase in murder was recorded. That is 562 more people were killed in South Africa between October and December compared to the same period in 2020. Out of 6,859 people killed in the country, 902 of them were women and 352 were children. 232 of the overall murders were as a result of domestic violence. 27 SAPS officers were killed on and off duty during this time.
Let's talk more about the latest crime statistics released by Police Minister Bheki Cele today. And as you would have heard, 352 children were killed between October and December of last year, while the number of attempted murders of children rose by 30% to 394. That's compared to 303 during the same period at the end of 2020. Let's speak now to Dr. Shaheda Omar from the Teddy Bear Foundation. Dr. Omar, very good evening to you. Welcome to News at Prime. 352 children murdered within a period of October to December. Have we lost control of the situation?
Well, I think we have to understand that figure is not an accurate reflection of the statistics. There are many more child homicides that have been committed and are unaccounted for. So have we lost it? Definitely, yes. The systems are failing the children in terms of proper investigations, DNA not being collected or forensics not being done thoroughly. As a result, no prosecution, no conviction, and more perpetrators are free to violate children. We know that annually, at least 1,000 children are victims of child homicide. So to actually, go by these statistics, it's a tip of the iceberg. We're not getting the accurate reflection of what is happening on the ground. And if we look at past research that has been conducted on death reviews, at least 15% of those have been as a result of child homicide. And we know that where do children get murdered and violated? They get murdered and violated within their own homes by their biological parents, mother, father, neighbor, relative, and children going to school, going to shops for shopping, or being sent to buy household items. That's where children are victimized. And yet we are finding that the law is not as consistent in terms of their decisions and justice being denied, because I think we can go back to many children, Zondi from Orange Farm, Tesne van Wyk. We can continue infinitely, and yet today, after a few years, we're still looking at the same horrific stats. One child, the death of one child is one too many.
And Dr. Omar, as you were saying about how this data may not necessarily represent the full or accurate picture of the abuse and homicides of children in this country, just this week, there was a story, I think, carried by News 24 about a father who's been convicted. What this man did is he sexually abused his 2 stepsons and then forced the children to sexually abuse their baby sister. And that is a crime, or crimes that were committed over a protracted or a long period of time, I think from about 2013 to about 2021, when finally he was caught.
And I think that's, again, if we look at justice delayed is justice denied, because as I said, law enforcement, if we look at many of the police officers, they're not even equipped, or they fail to conduct thorough investigations. And as a result, there's no prosecution. So we're finding that this is why, because things are reported, it's not attended to immediately. There's no swift responses. They do not follow up through on the case. We had a case last year. An 11-year-old came in with multiple fractures, old and new fractures. On further exploration, one of the social workers just explored further just to discover and learn that a 6-year-old sibling had also passed away a few months prior to that. And then the red flags went on, and we found that that child was a victim of child homicide, and this child, the 11-year-old, the explanation he gave was not plausible. The site of injury was not consistent with his story. It was brutal abuse within the home environment.
And you mentioned something else that's quite important, Dr. Omar, the element about reporting, right? It's difficult enough when adults are abused in the home or by someone who's known to them. What more when it's children?
Well, children are most vulnerable. They're a marginalized population group, and they are invisible. And of course, children are powerless. They're defenseless. How do they protect themselves against the might of any adult? Often they are victimized, threatened, coerced, and of course, as we see with the deaths, many of them just come to a catastrophic end. It's the demise of their child, and there's no follow-up thereafter.
How do we fix that? Address the point that you were just making about a lack of follow-up, because when you've got cases where children are abused for 2 years, even 5 years, 10 years in some homes, it takes a lot to not only carry through the prosecution process, but also help them through the trauma, which is the work that happens long after the media cameras have gone away and the abuser has been locked up.
So I think what you're saying is actually on a multi-tier, because it doesn't only mean the reporting structures, but how those reporting structures are received. They need to be received, with thorough exposure, and also to ensure that the investigation is rigorous, because we've had cases where rape has been reported, child rape, and the investigating officer only attends to it a few days later, which is actually very late. And then, of course, the child remains victimized, traumatized in terms of medical examinations, etc. So the whole, if we just look at the reflection of the systems that are failing children, law enforcement needs to step up where they need to ensure that skilled, experienced and trained personnel are allocated to those positions where they will execute what is actually expected of them. But even in terms of other authorities, if we look at prosecutors, because we know that NPA wants will put cases on the roll that are likely to get a conviction, and if it's not highly likely, they're not going to put the case on the roll. So again, and then we find that with medical examinations, when doctors examine children, they'll take it at face value, as we've seen with many death reviews. They go undiagnosed. There's no follow-up. So we need to actually ensure that everybody steps up. People are fully informed, equipped, and educated and empowered on how to respond to deaths of children. Because, as I said, how long must it take for us to actually stand up and stop the scourge of violence against children?
Is there any preventing the horrors that we're seeing committed against children in this country, or do we simply just have to pin our hopes at this stage on prosecuting those criminals who are eventually found out?
Well, it's a both-and situation. Yes, we have to prosecute them. They have to actually be convicted and serve severe sentencing. I think there's no excuse for letting them off the hook, like we've seen previously, parolees, the ex-parolee who killed Tesnie van Wyk. So I think it's about ensuring that, but also ensuring that there's police visibility and there's immediate action and swift responses to these kind of situations, but also to create more awareness in the communities, both with children and with adults, and ensuring that everybody is vigilant about protecting children.
Dr. Shaheda Omar from the Teddy Bear Foundation, good to speak to you, ma'am. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.